podcast.
Should we talk a little music? I haven't talked about much music as a concept or the TV station in quite a long time. I know that disappoints some of you. I know that some of you used to tune in primarily for my talk about music. And I don't know if any of those people are still around or not. Maybe they're gone and my current listening audience couldn't care less about music. I don't know. But last week I threw a bit of a bone to the history people. Talked a little bit of history. And so maybe this week we throw one to the music fans out there. You're going to have to forgive my voice. Something happened today whereby I just got a little tickle in my throat and my chest. I coughed a little bit. No need to be alarmed. Not a virus. Just some weird thing. And so I have had like throat congestion ever since. So my normal, deep, melodic, dulcet tones, not quite there right now, and I hope that's going to be okay. But if we're going to talk about music, we should probably talk about the most buzzed, hype-worthy, talked about, and I would suggest controversial band in the rock scene right now. And that can only be Sleep Token. Sleep Token is a thing right now. They've been around for a long time, okay? They've put out several records. Sleep Token is not new, but the buzz around Sleep Token at this moment is new. All right, it's been a slow build, very much like Ghost, and we're going to be talking about those bands sort of in an intertwined way for reasons that you'll find out. Sleep Token has been on my radar for a while. As I said, they've been around a long time. They've got several records out. They have this following, and it's one of those mysteries. Mystery is a good word for Sleep Token. Because they're another one of these bands that sort of had a slow burn and then all of a sudden just emerged. Ghost was a bit like that too, right? Ghost was a band that was playing clubs and put out a couple records, and then they would be appearing during the daylight on festivals and doing little headlining tours, and then sort of slowly but surely moving up to bigger rooms. And then all of a sudden, Ghost is just selling out arenas, and Sleep Token is doing very much the same thing. They've been on my radar, but I didn't dig very deeply into Sleep Token until very recently. And the reason is, as Ghost was releasing their new record, Scaletta, which went to number one, kids, on the Billboard 200 and went to number one in several other countries around the world. The first hard rock record, I think, since 2020 to hit number one on the Billboard. And that was a celebration amongst rock music fans. And almost immediately, I was reading comments where people were saying, Sleep Token's going to knock them off number one, you watch. Because their new record, even in Arcadia, was to follow hard upon Ghost's Scaletta. And here's a spoiler. Yeah, it went to number one on the Billboard too. And in different countries around the world. So it's like a rock and roll resurgence all of a sudden. So people were issuing this warning, this prediction that Sleep Token was going to just steamroll Ghost, who had conquered the charts. We know my allegiance to Ghost. And so I thought, Sleep Token's buzzing a little bit. Maybe I should listen. And so in preparation for my recent flight to Berlin, where I was going to see Ghost, I downloaded a couple of Sleep Token records and I listened to them on my flight. And okay. And then I got there, and as I was in the lineup at Uber Arena in Berlin, to get into the Ghost show, I took a look around, and obviously a lot of people dressed up in their Ghost regalia. Okay, a lot of nuns with skull paint, a lot of ghouls, a couple of papas, the Ghost thing, which is always fun to look at. But I noticed those who were not dressed up like Ghost were wearing a lot of Sleep Token t-shirts. And I saw a lot of Sleep Token patches on people's jackets and that sort of thing. And it became very clear that there is a substantial crossover between the Ghost fans and the Sleep Token fans. And it doesn't come as a huge surprise because while the bands I don't think are similar musically, I mean, they both fit at least a little bit on this wedge of the spectrum that is rock and roll. Guitar rock, sorta. And this is the thing, this is the real connection. They are both anonymous bands. Bands that perform behind masks. Bands that are ostensibly at least trying their best to remain anonymous. And that's a thing right now. We are in suddenly this weird timeline of bands with alter egos. Bands that are anonymous. There's another brand new one just popped up in the last couple of months, and that is President. Have you run across President in your travels? Timely, given what's going on politically and how prominent the dang president seems to be in everybody's lives right now, whether they want him to be or not. You can't go 2 sentences without stumbling upon a president somewhere in your travels. Bloody annoying. Tedious, actually. Along comes this band President, and it's the same deal. Anonymous, at least nominally. There is heavy speculation. People are convinced, actually, that the voice behind this band President is actually Charlie Simpson of Busted and Fight Star fame. I haven't really listened to those bands, but President has dropped a couple of singles. In the Name of the Father was the first, Fearless was the second, and if you read the comments on YouTube, it's like, hey, nice to have Charlie back. So people are very convinced that the voice of President is this guy, Charlie Simpson. I have no opinion on that because I haven't really listened to anything else associated with Charlie Simpson. In any case, they're trying to be anonymous, and so he appears in a mask, kind of like something out of the movie Point Break. Those guys running around dressed up like presidents. Well, the singer of President wears a mask reminiscent of something like that, and a suit with his tie like askew, like a president who's stressed, man. And there's obviously marketing and money behind this band because they appeared kind of out of nowhere on social media with these cryptic messages about an inauguration rally. President speaks in political terms, so they talk about their concerts as being rallies. Ghost speaks in religious terms, sort of faux Catholic terms about rituals, and Papa Emeritus is a pope, that sort of thing. And they do a lot of religious-sounding songs that are ostensibly about Satan as opposed to God. But Ghost speaks in religious terms, President seems to speak in political terms, and Sleep Token doesn't speak at all. That's the mystery there. In any case, this band President comes along, and they're making their debut, their inaugural rally, as they're calling it, at the Download Festival. And I'll tell you a secret, kids. You don't get a slot on the Download Festival as a band with no shows. Unless you've got some serious industry pull and money behind you. And that's happening this coming weekend. So those of us who have been watching with curious glances at this band President that's appeared, the debut is this weekend, and I guess we'll see and hear a little bit more. President, to me, if I wasn't watching the videos, if it wasn't this anonymous band, this weird mask, these sort of odd visuals, I don't think I would pay the slightest attention. All right, it's a very modern sounding metal band. Clean vocals for the most part, and then some heavy screamo comes in. Not a screamo guy. I don't know the modern language to describe this, but it sounds like a whole lot of other bands that you hear these days who have that kind of very detuned sound, that same sort of production. I mean, it sounds amazing. Production-wise, it sounds terrific. And the musicians are killer. And the guy's voice, whoever it is, Charlie Simpson, I guess, really terrific, but doesn't do a lot for me. It doesn't sound much different to me than a whole lot of other stuff, but they're coming in with this gimmick. And I have a theory. That the anonymous, faceless band in a mask thing is hot right now because I think people are looking for heroes. That's my theory. I think that the world is so nuts right now, thanks to the real president and some other stuff that's going on. Things feel very out of control. I think people feel a certain sense of powerlessness, uneasiness, worry, fear. And when you have uneasiness, worry, fear, what do you want? You want a hero. And when you step onto a stage and you are behind a mask and you've got this lore around your band, like Ghost has their lore, President is developing this lore, Sleep Token also has a lore. The guy who is the voice of and the songwriter for Sleep Token goes by the name Vessel. And in the lore of Sleep Token, he is a vessel for the philosophy and the teachings and the power of this god called Sleep. He is ostensibly the voice on earth of the god Sleep. And so I think people subconsciously are kind of drifting towards these things that seem supernatural when you step on stage in a mask or a robe or a cloak and your identity is hidden and you've got this lore behind you. You seem elevated, you seem powerful, you seem supernatural. And I think a lot of people are looking for something to latch onto that might be powerful, that might be a superhero that might save us. And so I think that's why the anonymous masked bands are maybe hot right now. But I don't know how many of those you can get away with. I don't even think President is going to do all that well because I think it's too late. I think we have Ghost already and we have Sleep Token already. And here comes President and it begins to look gimmicky at this point. But we'll see. We'll see what they do with this gimmick. I don't dislike the music. It just doesn't do a lot for me in the way that Ghost does. And the jury is out. My personal jury on Sleep Token. Because I don't know, and a lot of people don't know, what to make of this band. Now, they look great. As a visual, they look great. The Ghost looks like, or at least in the past, looked like faux Catholic Church. And in the early days of Ghost, the image was Papa with the mask and the robes, and the Nameless Ghouls, the backing band, just wearing black hooded robes, completely hidden. And it looked spooky and it looked great. And I didn't love the music until I did. The visual I really liked. And Sleep Token doesn't quite look like that. They look like something out of maybe Star Wars. Something possibly even out of Lord of the Rings or out of Assassin's Creed or something like that. Robes, yes. And then the Ghost character, the Papa characters all had faces at least. Sleep Token doesn't have faces. Like their faces are hidden. Black paint and then masks. These really creepy looking, weird, futuristic and past. That's like what the Star Wars thing is, right? Like totally in the future in a galaxy far, far away. And Sleep Token feels like that too. Like it looks like the past and the future all at the same time. It's a really, really great visual. And I've seen some live footage from their tour, which just started a couple weeks ago. And it just looks great. The stage is multi-layered. Like the drummer's on the second floor, you know what I mean? And there are people up top. And then you get on the stage, Vessel. There are only two members of Sleep Token. They are Vessel and the drummer, who goes by the name 2. And whoever 2 is, he's an animal. That dude rips. He is a killer player. And the music he is playing is really demanding. One of the things that works about Ghost is that their songs are absolutely ambitious and genius. There's a genius in what Tobias Forge writes, but they are fairly immediate, especially the last few records. A lot of radio singles, a lot of really catchy anthemic 80s choruses. Ghost is brilliant, but the music is very accessible. And what causes all the controversy with Sleep Token is that the music is not that. They have been described variously. I'm just looking just off of their Wikipedia page. I don't know how to characterize these guys. I don't know how to describe this music. And so I'm relying on people smarter than me who have the musical vocabulary to describe them a little bit. And so what you get from their Wikipedia page is you get some music critic describing them as containing elements of heavy metal, electronica, hip hop, gent, prog metal. Somebody else says everything from technical metal to pop and R&B and trap, post-rock, post-classical, trap with soulful indie pop vocals that sounds, and this is key, like nothing else. And where the controversy comes with Sleep Token is that they get a lot of coverage in the metal press without actually being a metal band. And metal gatekeepers, which are Legion and Vocal and Vigilant, are losing their minds because when you listen to Sleep Token, they are the very definition of genre bending. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about from the new record. The new record is Even in Arcadia. It just came out a few weeks ago. And the second song is called Emergence. And this song opens with piano. Just a clear piano and Vessel singing, clean vocals. It's very dark. Most of this music with Sleep Token is very dark, very evocative, very emotional, a little bit emo, dare I say it. There's definitely a dark, brooding vibe to this band, also different from Ghost, which becomes increasingly campy and silly and fun. Like, Ghost is a ton of fun. Sleep Token is very serious, and it's a much different thing. And so Emergence begins with piano and a vocal line, and then it comes to this hook where Vessel is singing, "Go ahead and wrap your arms around me, wrap your arms around me, wrap your arms around me." And there's a vocal effect on it. There's a vocal effect on a lot of the vocal processing in these records. A lot of auto-tune, like that deliberate Cher auto-tune. And I don't love that. One of the things that I can't quite jive with when it comes to Sleep Token, much as I recognize, I'm not a metal gatekeeper, I recognize the depth and the brilliance of the writing on some of this stuff. It is very unusual. I get hung up on the vocal delivery. I think Vessel has a really great voice. I just don't like the enunciation. There's a thing that's going on right now in pop music in particular, which is variously referred to as hip singing. And you've heard this if you've had the radio on, if you can stand it, to a pop station or a top 40 station, and you hear a lot of pop singers with this really bizarre pronunciation of words. Like, instead of singing, "It feels like this," they sing, "It feels like this," this, or us becomes us. You know what I mean? This really weird vowel pronunciation. I find it obnoxious and annoying. I really hate it. I don't usually come out with strong opinions. I'm coming out on a strong opinion here. I despise hip singing. And I despise these weird vocal enunciations. That's not how you say the friggin' word. Annoys me. And there's a bit of that in Sleep Token. Right? It's not that much, but it's in there. And I don't like that pronunciation, and it bothers me. Great voice. Dude is a great singer, but I do not like that enunciation. Anyway, there's all this vocal effect on this hook. Go ahead and wrap your arms around me. He's singing it a little bit hip, but, you know, as soon as I heard it, I'm like, I can hear thousands of people singing that. I can hear the Sleep Token faithful jumping all over that hook and that line and singing it. And I was like, I just know that this works and is going to work. And it does. And so we get to the end of that little section. Go ahead and wrap your arms around me. And then there's this like trap groove that comes in. Now, I don't have a great definition of trap music, but it's like a hip hop style. And it's characterized by really intricate, strange hi-hat patterns. I think a lot of that is probably digital. You've got a drummer like Two. He's playing it for real. And so this trap section comes in, and all of a sudden you're listening to fundamentally a hip-hop song. You've been listening to this really emotive ballad with a hook and vocal processing, and then it's like hip-hop, and he's basically rapping, and then it goes into this kind of Linkin Park style kind of thing. Makes you think of early 2000s. This is all one song, kids. And then back into this ethereal kind of vocal break. And then just this really beautiful section. My observation of Sleep Token is that a lot of it is just breathtakingly beautiful. Piano sections with beautiful melodies in them, stuff that sounds like indie rock, and the vocals are delivered that way. And a lot of it is really just ethereal and melodically beautiful. And so we go into a section like that. And then there's like an indie rock section. And then it gets a bit heavier and it sounds a little bit emo. And there are vocal hooks happening. And then guitars are coming in. And then we cut out and go back into another arms around me section. And then it just kicks in hard. Then it becomes a metal song, like this really heavy chugging riff. And it smokes, man. And they play this earnest kind of section of the song where they're just rocking out and they're singing this stuff. Again, it's dark. Again, it's brooding and it's beautiful and it's heavy. And then that cuts and the song outros with just piano and a saxophone solo. And you're like, what? What just happened? How did all of that turn into 6 minutes of one song? And this is Sleep Token. It is at times R&B, it is trap, it is hip hop, and then they'll just bust into this metal riff. And when they go heavy, it's all drop tuned, it's all very modern sounding. So heavy. Like when it gets heavy, it gets so heavy. And Vessel can scream. And he will. And you watch the live footage, he's got this kind of bizarre flowing dance that he does around the stage as he's singing. Real performer. And if you look at the visuals, it's amazing. Like the lights and the smoke and the set. And then this guy in the robes and his face is covered and he's dancing and he's singing. And it's like, wow, what a spectacle this is visually. Whether you like the music or not, what a spectacle this is to look at. It's really fun. It's really powerful. And the music is all over the friggin' place. And then half of the songs on this new record, and this is where the metal gatekeepers get angry, half of them are like R&B songs. They are piano with some trap beats happening behind them. They're pop. And the metal community is angry because Sleep Token keeps getting characterized as a metal band because there are sections of their songs which just pound, just crush, man. And when they kick in hard, yeah, it's metal. Yeah, it's metal. But 30 seconds later, it might be an R&B song with saxophone in it. And the metal community is mad. Metal community is mad at Ghost for not being heavy enough. That's just pop music. Goth for Disney kids. And then the metal community is even more mad at Sleep Token because they get all of this attention. They play all these huge shows. They get all this press in the metal world. with most of the time their songs not being metal. And that's the controversial part. Now, I'm mature. I'm mature and old enough to not be so much a gatekeeper anymore. When I was younger, yeah, probably. I'm not young anymore. And so I can look at it and say, well, this band sounds like nobody else, and that's cool. And I don't care about genre so much anymore. I'm not a pop music fan. I'm certainly not a trap fan or a hip hop fan. But I hear Sleep Token do some of this stuff, and I'm like, I kind of dig it. Because they write great hooks. When they pound, they really pound, but they do it in a heavy and melodic way. And I intend to see them live at some point. I don't love the music. I'm coming straight out and saying, musically, give me Ghost over Sleep Token 10 times out of 10. But I do recognize the genius. I do recognize the prog that's happening here. I do recognize the singular, particular artistic bent that makes Sleep Token, and nobody else. And I recognize that 2 is an absolute monster on the kit. And as far as I know, Sleep Token, they don't say one word on stage. As far as I know, they say nothing on stage. Vessel doesn't speak. He lets the music do the talking. I think they've given only one interview, which was Vessel talking to somebody on behalf of their label, maybe. And then the only other appearance they've made publicly, apart from performing, is that 2 did a section on Drumeo. So weirdly, you can go watch 2 breaking down his drumming influences in costume, in character, and then playing on the Drumeo channel, which is a weird thing, a weird choice for a band to make that has been so resolute about being silent and anonymous, but drop over to Drumeo and chat drums for a while. Strange thing, monster player, just a friggin' great player. And I can see happening for me what happened with Ghost. What happened with Ghost was I loved the image immediately. As soon as I saw them, I'm like, oh, I love this. I like costume bands. I just do, whether that's Ghost or Steel Panther. I like these larger-than-life personas. I like the characters. Rock and roll used to do that. We had Kiss. We had Alice Cooper. We had Gwar, for crying out loud. There's always been an element of that. And then in the 80s in particular, 70s and 80s, you didn't even actually need a costume anymore. Well, your stage clothes were that. Okay, if you were an 80s rock star, you looked like an 80s rock star, and I suppose that made you a superhero. And I've talked before on this show about how bands were marketed back in the 80s. In the 80s glam scene, you knew who every member of the band was, right? So if you saw Cinderella, you could name them all. They all became, in a sense, characters. They all became superheroes. And they lived larger than life. And this is pre-social media, so they could maintain a slight air of mystery. You only saw about them in magazines, really. You didn't get to follow Tom Kiefer on Instagram and see what was going on every day. So there was this separation from them. They were legit rock stars in the way that I don't think things are marketed so much that way anymore. Not a lot of people can name all the members of the Foo Fighters, for example, or Coldplay or whatever. Whereas back in the day, people were marketed that way as characters, as personalities. And so you didn't so much need a costume, but your whole persona was a costume in that sense. It's a long time-honored tradition in rock and roll. And so I didn't love Ghost's music right away because it was jarring to me. I loved the image, and I had a certain sound in my mind when I saw them for the first time. I mean pictures. And then I heard the music, and it was nothing like that. I've talked about this before. They looked like a deep black metal or death metal band, and I expected it to be crushingly heavy, and it wasn't. First couple records were Deep Purple, man. They were 70s rock and roll. They're great in retrospect, but at the time it was jarring. I didn't really get it. And I still don't love Opus Eponymous. Infestessimum, I do. Opus Eponymous, not so much. I loved the image, didn't love the music. And then it just clicked. When Square Hammer came out, it just found its way into my soul, opened me up, and then I went back and listened, and I started to get it. And now I love Infestessimum, Everything. I love it all, except I'm not huge on Opus Eponymous. But that took a hook. It took something opening me up. And so I approached Sleep Token in a similar kind of way. The music is more dense. The music is way more prog. The music is, in a certain sense, more demanding of the listener. And I don't love the vocal delivery. So it's got some stuff working against it. But I'm wondering if I may turn into a Sleep Token fan as I kind of follow this. And I would like to see them live because the show looks just fantastic. And the performances live are amazing. They have Vessel and 2 are the permanent members. They have 3, 4, and 5 also performing on stage, guitar, bass, keyboard probably. And then this trio of backup singers called Espera or Espera, however you want to pronounce it. And so you get the full effect. And all these robed characters on the stage performing the music, and it is emotional. It is evocative. And when it kicks in, it just destroys. And Vessel is a silent, very charismatic performer. And it's hard to look away from somebody who's dressed the way he is and performing the way he is. And so I've been listening over the past week or two. I've been trying my best to dig into Sleep Token. I've been listening to Even in Arcadia, and it's growing on me, to be honest, because I'm starting to know the songs. It's really difficult in the first couple of listens because the songs are so weird. The songs go so many places, it's hard to distinguish one from the other in some cases. And then you get into a style of music that if you're like me, you probably don't listen a lot to, which is trap or which is hip hop or R&B, something like that. It's like not something you would normally go for. Takes you a minute to begin to kind of absorb that. You got to listen to this record several times before you begin to recognize stuff, before you begin to recognize the different songs. And so I really like the opening song, which is Look to Windward. I like Emergence that I talked about. Caramel is kind of celebrated as the song of the record. I think there's maybe a video for that one. I like the title track, Even in Arcadia. I like Damocles, Gethsemane, and Infinite Baths, which are the last 3 songs. A great 3-song run out. Some of it's really heavy. Some of it's really, really pretty. It's interesting stuff. If you can suspend your reservations about some of what's going on, if we're getting into genre-wise stuff that's not really your bag, if you can suspend some of that and just take the songs as they are and not be any sort of a gatekeeper and just listen, you're like, well, there's elements here. There's stuff here that, yeah, there's something really beautiful about a lot of it. There's something really heavy about a lot of it. I don't know how deep I'm going to get. I've liked stuff on their other records too. They have several records out now and I've listened to them and it's like, well, on one level, I listened to all of this music that goes to so many places and is so unusual. And I'm like, well, kudos to that guy. Much as I've said, if Tobias is writing all of that ghost music himself, what a genius he is. Same goes for Vessel. If he's writing all of this stuff himself, my goodness, what a creative brain. That's remarkable. So I don't know how deep it's going to go for me. I'm going to keep listening. I would like to see them live because the show looks great. And I don't know. Curious to know, those of you who have listened to Sleep Token, what you think. If you haven't listened to Sleep Token before, go and check out the song Emergence. It will give you a pretty vivid snapshot of the strange places that this band goes. And you might really dig it. I mean, if you are into something very proggy, something very unusual, and something hip, you want to impress your kids, tell them you're listening to the new Sleep Token record. Worth checking out. It's really, really interesting stuff, and I'm on the fence. I'm not quite sure how I feel about it, but I'm growing to like them. I'm growing to like them, and the visual certainly works for me. I was going to talk about some other music. I don't have time. One thing I will say, I've been mildly obsessed with a song recently. You may recall, I don't know, a year or two ago, 2 years ago, I talked about the band Unto Others. and I talked on the show about their song Butterfly, which was the lead single from their most recent record, the title of which escapes me. But they're like a metal/goth band. Really, really cool. Just a very, very well-produced band. Great imagery. Just a cool band. But they have a distinct goth edge. So it's got that kind of romantic, overwrought, pained, but also like great straight up rock and roll. And they did an EP in 2018 called Don't Waste Your Time. And there's a song on there, Butterfly, now that I think of it, came from the record Never Never Land. So if you want to look at the most recent stuff by Unto Others, Never Never Land. There's a song on the Don't Waste Your Time EP called Can You Hear the Rain? And I just friggin' love it. And it's just a straight up dark rock and roll song. It's pretty much a metal song, but just the most engaging chorus. Just not a super complicated song, but it just hits you in all the right spots. So if Sleep Token freaks you out too much, go listen to Can You Hear the Rain by Unto Others, which is much less prog, but just, it's got hooks in it to just grab you by the face, man, and just pull you into a whole goth universe. And God knows what happens to you after that. What happens to me is I got to wrap this thing and edit it and get it going because I'm way, way behind schedule. Go check that music out. Check out Sleep Token. Check out Unto Others. And drop me a note. Let me know what you think because I don't know what to think. So I'm curious to know if you do. Until then, hope you enjoyed a little music talk this week. I'm working on a project that's related to that, which may or may not see the light of day, and I'll leave that cryptically where it is. In any case, hope you're well. Thank you ever so much for listening. Good things happen when you put yourself out there, and hey kids, I'll check you later. Yeah.
Go ahead and wrap your arms around me, arms around me, arms around me. Go ahead and wrap your arms around me, arms around me, arms around me.